'cause I'm a boss. Kelis's first 5 lines in her top-selling hit Bossy can honestly be her answer to everyone who has something to say about her outspoken willingness to call out not only the entire music industry, but Queen Bee herself, Beyoncé Giselle Knowles-Carter. When Kelis came out the gate swinging following the release of Beyoncé's new album, Kelis didn't hold back calling out Rumi Sir's mother for stealing music. It'll later be revealed that Kelis's old dream team had mercilessly stabbed her in the back. But it wasn't so much Bey herself that had Kelis hot, more than it was the business she had accidentally gotten herself into way back when. Imagine accidentally on purpose getting into the music industry and accidentally achieving a top 5 on Billboard's Hot 100. Well, Kelis doesn't have to imagine anything, as her reality was much more surreal than any dream she could have possibly dreamt. Raised in the Frederick Douglass housing unit in Manhattan, Kelis Rogers would go from theater nerd to queen of the alt-quirky black girls. Born to a Pentecostal minister and professor father and fashion designer mother, Mama Evelise, despite not knowing a lick about the music biz, pushed her equally talented offspring to pursue singing even though Kelis's heart was set elsewhere. Theater, to be more frank. A performance arts high school had been part of Kelis's theatrical molding since the age of 14. And although singing was more so of a plan C, if anything, she'd partake in it creating an R&B girl group, Black Ladies United, or Blue, with 2 other friends. Fiorello H. LaGuardia High School of Music and Art and Performing Arts aided in the upkeep of Kelis's creative strengths, and she'd keep at the music side of the track pending her vocals to the track Fairy Tales for the hip-hop group Gravediggers. This being one of many stepping stones Kelis would encounter on her musical endeavors. Not too long after, a mutual friend would introduce her to her longtime music collaborators and also the guys that aided in her trust issues, Pharrell Williams and Chad Hugo of the Neptunes, and life as she knew would never be the same. They'd grown extremely close with one another, Kelis often taking refuge in the studio along with Pharrell and Chad. The trust was there, and so was the music that Kelis often helped transform, along with Pharrell's music style and even fashion in general. Out of the blue, one of the Neptunes initiated the question about Kelis being a musical artist, and of course she hesitated, probably more than she did, when it came down to actually signing her contract with the Neptunes label, Star Trek. With their support, Kelis landed a deal with Virgin Records, who'd been adamant that all publishing royalties would be split evenly between the Neptunes and Kelis herself. But as we know by now, that wasn't necessarily the case. More on that later. Kaleidoscope, Kelis's debut studio album, was released in 1999, peaking at number 144 on Billboard's 200 chart. Its lead single, Caught Out There, became a top 10 R&B and hip-hop bop, peaking at number 54 on Billboard's Hot 100, which wasn't bad at all for a newcomer. It eventually reached the top 5 on the Top Heat Seekers chart and has sold over 200,000 copies. The follow-up singles did moderately well, but were less successful. Nevertheless, Kelis's songwriting and musical abilities didn't go unnoticed. In 2001, she won the Brit Award for International Breakthrough Act, as well as an NME Award for Best R&B Soul Act, venturing off to join fellow artists Among and U2 on their Area 1 and Elevation tours. R&B was often linked to Kelis's sound, but an R&B artist Kelis was not, but black. Her second 2001 studio album, Wonderland, got a release date in Europe, Latin America, and Asia, but never dropped in North America until recent years. Virgin Records US had dropped Kelis like a toddler holding a baby, but she'd still been contractually tied to the label in Europe. Needless to say, it flopped harder than a fish out of water, but that didn't falter Kelis one bit. She'd get her lick back in 2003 with Milkshake from her third album, Tasty. The club banger helped push the album to gold status and peaked at number 27 on Billboard's 200, as well as number 3 on the Hot 100, selling over 500,000 copies. It'd be parodied and used in a number of TV shows and films. The song even gifted Kelis a 2004 Grammy nomination for Best Urban Alternative Performance. Milkshake was the highlight of Kelis's career, and unfortunately her follow-up single, similar to her first album, didn't live up to its hype. Partly due to her new label, Jive Records, the label she gets sent to after the fall of Arista Records, Star Trek's head division, and lack of promotion. Working with a multitude of diverse talents, Kelis was not about to be put in a box. Latin artists like Enrique Iglesias and Icelandic talent like Björk helped introduce Kelis to new audiences and vice versa. Kelis was here. Her fourth album, featuring her second biggest U.S. hit, Bossy, placed Kelis on the relevancy radar once more before Jive Records cut ties with her in 2007. Now a free agent, she'd hop from label to label, even being managed by no other than P. Diddy. Yikes. At one point, before taking a hiatus from the beat-dropping, adrenaline-pumping music scene for a few years. Ongoing legal battles with ex-husband Nas would take its place, but one thing Kelis had to fall back on was her love for food. Culinary was the gateway, and the gateway from Kelis's hectic life as a famous songstress. Training as a part-time saucier between 2006 and 2010, she eventually graduated from Le Cordon Bleu's Culinary School and hit us with her own sauce line, Feast. A cookbook soon followed, and even another album in 2014, this time based around her longtime interest away from music, cooking. Kelis's hiatus from the music world left many wondering what had happened to the rebellious, outspoken girl we'd all grown accustomed to. Well, it's no secret that Kelis has had more than a few negative experiences with the business. Along with some people questioning her musical genres of choice, she hated the LA scene altogether, choosing to uproot and move to a farm somewhere in another part of California. Her former close friends, Pharrell Williams and Chad Hugo, are a part of Kelis's industry starter kit. Established by the Mutual Performing Arts School they'd all attended, the trio were like no other. Springboarding and piggybacking off of Kelis's songwriting talents combined with Pharrell's artistic directions and Chad's peculiar beats. She thought she had a friend. Little did she know she was playing patty cake with Decepticons. According to her, an even three-way split in royalties was what a then teen Kelis had been promised. A 33-33-33 deal which never came to fruition. Even worse, Kelis never received even 1% of that offer. She gained nothing from her first two albums produced by the Neptunes, Kaleidoscope and Wonderland, but failed to notice any lack of profit for years after their releases due to the money she'd been making from tours. When it came to her third album, however, Kelis no longer wanted to stay confined to the Neptunes' musical direction, and they were offended to say the least. When she saw Pharrell just a few years ago at an industry event as he performed on stage with a blank-faced Kelis sitting in the audience, he addressed her presence with one of his signature head nods, to which she'd return. Despite playing it cool, Kelis wanted nothing more than to stand up from her seated position and yell at Pharrell mid-performance about all of the publishing rights and profits he'd withheld from her. Many trials and tribulations later, the death of her husband of 7 years, Mike Mora, being one of them, Kelis has stayed true to herself and continues to be as resilient as ever. For her sake and also the sake of her 3 children. Kelis's credits for her music has been an ongoing struggle, which is why when Beyoncé's album Renaissance dropped and fans heard some Kelis tease going on, Kelis wasn't thrilled. Nevertheless, I think it's safe to say her issue with Beyoncé is really an issue with the industry as a whole, scamming their artists with every type of loophole there is, and thus the rise of the independent artist was born. Do you believe the Neptunes were in the wrong? Let us know your thoughts and opinions in the comments, and stay tuned for more true celebrity stories.